beep, 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 beep. We're back. And we're quite close. We're in the final 10, 11 minute, 45 seconds of the third hour. And it's a pretty dense 10 minutes. It's, let's see, starts at page 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22, 22. Why does this have two 22s? 21, 22, 22. Well, whatever. Microsoft Word is silly sometimes. But, I forgot what I was doing. I was counting how many pages it is. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And like a little bit. And then the first page didn't start till a little bit down. So we could just call that 5 pages. How is that? So we start at 7:48. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1950. So that's 12 minutes for 5 pages. Okay. I don't know. I don't know if the page numbers equates to time. More or less might. 56, 54, 59. It's like 2 minutes for that page. Oh yeah, it's about 2 minutes a page. Well, anyway. Oh yeah, I forgot I'm fucking doing a stream. So we're here, we're educating ourselves, we're having fun, we're digging into this debate in a very, very slow, methodical manner, and that's the way we do things here. This is meant to be very slow, very tedious. This is not entertainment, nor is it education. Sorry. I mean, wait, no, it is education, kind of. Except it's not me educating you. It is us being educated by the material. I am a teacher, but I'm not your teacher. Consider me like a fellow student in the school of life. I'm just your temporary study buddy. As long as you're here, as long as you're watching this. And so we want things to be real relaxed and easy. Although we could get passionate, we could get loud, we could get messy, because there's no rules. Other than the YouTube policy community guidelines. So, what's happening at the last 10 minutes? And in order to talk about the last 10 minutes, I gotta kind of go back a little bit to set up the context. But basically, Norm has finally gotten able to get a word in edgewise from the interruption to explain how, based on how the IDF acted at the Great March of Return, in which they purposely, deliberately targeted civilians, they had snipers shooting targeted children, journalists, medics, and disabled people who were 300 meters away from the fence. All right? And he kind of just drops this as, like, there's your answer, you moron. Speaking to Stephen Morelli. Stephen Borelli, because he's such a bore with his stupidity. It's more like tedium. They should call him Tedious Stephen. Look around the corner, there's Tedious Stephen. We keep grieving because he keeps staying around. He doesn't go away. We just want him just to go away. Oh, Tedious Stephen, please get the fuck away from us. Just go, like, work in the fucking... Look, go work in... Where should tedious people have jobs? Go work in, like, the back room of, like, or I don't know, just do like wiring or electrical work. Something where you're just away from other people and they don't have to hear your bullshit. Maybe have them, like, clean, get a job as, like, a night janitor at, like, a university, so you're not really interacting with anybody, but then you're doing something useful. Now, I would actually, okay, according to these streams, what's canon is that Stephen Bonnell has been officially sentenced by me in my court to an extraordinary sentence of punishment. He is hereby ordered, and he is under this court's command, and is currently in breach of this court. This court has found Stephen in contempt, by the way. But his punishment, what I'm saying, is that he has to slap himself in the face and slap himself in the dick really hard. And he has to do it continuously at a decent rate all day, every day for the rest of his life. Now, if he wanted to do some kind of plea bargain and he said something and we could get him, like, set up, you know, in a small town somewhere and get him set up with, like, a nice, like, night school janitorial job. Set him up with, like, a decent little trailer. And at night, he goes in and he sweeps and vacuums up and washes the windows and stuff in the school. And then he can just kind of sleep and relax in the day. He won't definitely not have internet access. That's obviously going to be banned. That's off the table. But if he wants to just clean, be the creepy night janitor, and not a school like a children's school. It's got to be like an adult school, like a culinary school. Yeah. You know, something with only adults attending. And again, he only comes in after hours when no one else is there, and that's the only time he's ever in contact with anything related to the public. Sometimes it's fun to think about all the ways to get rid of Stephen Bonnell. There's so many ways. You can be creative with it. You can be creative with it, and you can still be compassionate with it. You can be creative and compassionate, even though he doesn't deserve compassion. But he does deserve a slap in the face, a slap in the dick. And he has to do it himself. I'm not saying anybody else can do it. Okay? I want him to do it to himself. That's the true punishment. If you or me or anyone else tries to slap him in the face, slap him in the dick, it's not going to work. It's going to be counterintuitive or counterproductive, and it's going to ruin the whole thing. He has to slap himself. And because what I will reveal is that deep down he wants to. And at the end of his sentence, he's going to thank me for it. He's going to say, thank you. I had to slap the silly out of me. I got taken control of by the silly monster when I was only 10 years old. And I'll say, go on, young boy. Go and sin no more. Except that won't happen because his sentence is a life sentence. Sorry. No chance for parole. I already ruled that. I literally cannot change my mind, even if I wanted to. That's canon. It's canon. Stephen Bonnell is sentenced to a life of slapping his face and dick. Okay? The janitor job is off the table. Okay, so what was I talking about again? Norman. Oh, yeah, Norman just answered Steven's stupid question. Benny comes in and says, if what you're saying is true, if this is true, Lex Friedman comes in. Just a quick pause. I think everything was fascinating to listen to, except the mention of hilarious. Nobody finds any of this hilarious. And if any of us are laughing, it's not at the suffering of civilians or suffering of anyone. It's at the obvious joyful camaraderie in the room. So I'm enjoying it. And also the joy of learning. So thank you. Okay, now I know that Lex didn't give it that much cheese when he was talking it, when he was saying this shit. I'm obviously reading it. He was a little more tongue-in-cheek. To be fair, we'll say that this was sarcasm. The obvious joyful camaraderie in the room. But this is nothing but Lex swooping in to interrupt this whole line of questioning. Completely misunderstanding why it was that the mention of hilarious what is it, Lex, when you say the mention of hilarious? You're clearly just talking about what Norm said. Why did Norm say hilarious? Why did Norm? Because when Benny Moore said, I don't know, best trained, there were not, I don't know, the best trained, there were snipers. There was snipers. Fine, okay, all right. And then Stephen Bonelli, the dippitiest of shits, starts scoffing and laughing. And it's not in this one, but he says he's editorializing. He's editorializing. Let's try to put that in there. Hold on a second. I believe he says he's editorializing. 247.30. Let's take it back to 247.30. Give that a listen. See what it actually says. 247. Okay, we'll go to 25. Here we go.
Snipers, correct?
I don't know best trained. There were snipers.
Fine.
Snipers.
Okay, all right?
Because,
hey, lad.
Did you say bad editorializing? Look at him. He lets out an audible, like a squeaky laugh. I can't even do it.
All right? Because, hey, lad.
Best trained. They were
but-
snipers.
Fine.
Snipers.
Okay. All right?
They're so like, this is, let's look at the moment it goes from serious face to laugh. Serious to laugh. Let's pull this up a little closer so you can appreciate. Right at 31, he laughs. Benny Morris, that's how many chuckles? That's 1, 2, 3. A triple chuckle. And a shit-eating smirk on his face. Oh my God, it's unbelievable. Let's watch that again.
They were
But-
snipers.
Fine.
Snipers.
Okay. All right. Because, hey, lad.
The editorializing. I think he says the editorializing. The editorializing. All right, that's a line that the transcript did not quite catch. Hey, laugh, it's hilarious. Why didn't you write in the same font? I guess it is the same font. It's just not the same color. Oh, I want you to be the same color as the thing. Okay. The editorializing. Hey, laugh. It's hilarious. This story is so funny.
Was Israel's best trained snipers. Correct?
I don't know best trained. They were
But-
snipers.
Fine.
Snipers.
Okay. All right? Because,
editorializing.
hey, laugh. It's hilarious. The story's so funny.
You're lying about
It's
the Great
so
March of Return
funny.
had aspects
Okay.
of violence to it.
Okay.
According, even the UN
Okay,
says it themselves.
okay.
So when Stephen laughed, was that due to camaraderie? Was that due to his happy feelings of camaraderie or the spirit of learning? Because what did he do directly after he laughed? He said, "You're lying! You're lying! The Great March of Return had aspects of violence to it." And this is when he's like, you don't know the fucking English language. Because when I said a thing is overwhelmingly peaceful, a big giant event involving thousands and thousands of people over months, and I say that was overwhelmingly violent, it can have aspects of violence to it. And especially had many aspects of violence to it that were caused by Israel. And the aspects of violence were entirely bullshit and minor compared to snipers shooting people. Right? So this is what was set up before Norm finally explained what happened. It targeted children. Blah, blah, blah. That came later. This happens earlier where Stephen's like, "You're lying. It had aspects of violence to it." And then he pulls out this article and reads an entire paragraph aloud word for word, as fast as he can, to try to prove that Norm is quote unquote lying about the Great March of Return when he says it was overwhelmingly peaceful. Even though the very paragraph that he's reading exactly agrees with Norm Finkelstein. So it was interesting because Stephen said something that basically indicated that he doesn't understand the English language. Stephen doubled down by saying, I can read the whole thing myself. So he's like, technically, yeah, you do read and speak the language of English. But what he really meant is that you can't actually understand the underlying meaning in language. You understand all the words. But like when someone says you don't understand the English language, instead of interpreting that as I literally do, you take it to mean, oh, I must have completely misunderstood what this guy was saying. Or at least he's accusing me of misunderstanding what he said. You should at least know that. That when someone says to you, oh, I don't think you know the fucking English language. Like, what he's complaining about is not that I don't know English. It's that I have misunderstood something. Or I'm at least portraying, implying, putting words in their mouth, something like that. I can read from the UN website itself. Again, he didn't even say what he was reading. I had to fish for it. Now, I don't appreciate that. Those are always points off. You know, if he had any points left, he'd have lost them just for that. Talk fast so people think you're coherent. I'm just reading from the UN. Yeah, but you got the months wrong. We're talking about the beginning in March 30th. To what? Okay, allow me to finish. So there were snipers, okay? Now you find it so far-fetched, Israeli purposely, deliberately targeting civilians? That's such a far-fetched idea? An overwhelmingly nonviolent march? What did the international investigation... It wasn't the march. It was a campaign which went on for months. Whatever you want to call it, yeah. What did the UN investigation find? All right, let's put this in read mode, and this will actually make it a little easier to follow along with. All right, so where we left off was at 50 minutes. Because this is when Lex interrupts to talk about how the only reason anyone laughed, which is because of the camaraderie. Is he talking about just the camaraderie between Steven and Benny? Because they are getting along pretty well. I can grant that. They do seem to be pretty good buddies. Which is literally an insult to Benny Morris. A purposeful insult. Like, I hate Benny Morris. Fuck you, Benny Morris. You're a piece of shit, Benny Morris. You're friendly with Destiny. That's another one of the insults I'm saying right now. Just so you know. And, yeah. So now Steven wants to bring up a fucking new point. Can we talk about the targeting civilian thing a little bit? I think there's important. Oh, yeah, okay. He says that there's 3 different things here. Okay, we analyzed a bit of minute 50, but we haven't. Yeah, we haven't got through it because it's nonsensical. He says there's three things. He says there's three things, and he says one thing, and that thing isn't really a thing. It's just him asking Moin Rabbani if he agrees that the IDF kills civilians on purpose. And then he says a second thing. And Benny Morris is like, he said yes. Because he's talking so fast. Steven said initially, he's like, I'm going to say all three questions first, and then I'll let you answer all three of them. And he said, because I'm sure it won't be a short answer. Which is stupid, because as soon as he asks the question, Moin Rabbani just says yes. So then Benny Morris like interrupts Steven. He says, he said yes. As like thinking Steven didn't hear him, because he's like, oh, you didn't, you were talking at the same time, so you didn't hear it. Steven then says, I'll write that down. I'll write that down. Buddy, what are you doing? I've said before that it sounds like he seems to be adopting the style of like a detective in an interrogation, or like an investigator or something. The way he's like, oh, interesting. Yeah, I'll write that down. That's mostly what he's been doing. He's probing the other side of like, well, so do you believe this or do you believe that? Okay, interesting. Write that down. And so do you believe this or do you believe that? Interesting. Write that down. Do you believe this? I feel like at the end he's going to be like, okay, so thus far in this debate, you have said that you blah, 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 and yet you also blah, blah, blah. And then you said you've blah, 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 blah. Right? Like that, which kind of makes sense if you think of this as a debate where you're just like, I have to crush my opponents. I don't have to prove my side right. I just have to prove them to be inconsistent and incoherent. So I'm going to just characterize everything they say in the most incoherently stupid way possible, and then just say, that's what you're saying, and that's ridiculous. And then think that they won the debate. But true debate should be like not to that end. If we want to know who actually makes a better case, or not who makes a better case, we want to understand what the better case is. Right? Doesn't matter who makes it. If it's the collective work of many people, it's probably quite likely to be the case versus just one person's idea. So Steven says there's three things. The first thing, do you think is, hey, Moeen, do you think the IDF purposely kills civilians? Yes. Okay. The second thing, this is the second thing that we all have to keep in mind. Or there's two distinctions I want to draw between. I think Benny would say this. I would say this. I'm sure undoubtedly there have been cases where IDF soldiers, for no good reason, have targeted and killed Palestinians that they should not have done, that would be prosecutable as war crimes as defined by the inaudible. Benny Morris, and some have been prosecuted. What is the second thing? The second thing is there's a distinction that undoubtedly IDF soldiers have killed Palestinians. and some have been prosecuted. Norm says, according to you and your book, practically none. Stephen said, I'm sure we would all agree for soldiers that happens. But I think that it's important that we talk about military strikes, or when we talk about military strikes, or we talk about talk about things, especially involving bombings or drone attacks. These are things that are signed off by multiple different layers of command. Okay, so is the second thing the distinction between an individual soldier acting versus an individual soldier breaking the rules and going against his orders versus soldiers following their orders, which are crimes, ordered to do crimes? That's the second thing we should keep in mind, that there's a distinction between those two things. Maybe. I mean, yeah, I guess there is technically a distinction between those two things. You make it, you're using so many words. Undoubtedly, there have been cases where IDF soldiers, for no good reason, have targeted and killed Palestinians that they should not have done, that would be prosecutable as war crimes as defined by the... And some have been, but actually practically none. But when it's a drone strike, these things are signed off by multiple different layers of command, by multiple people involved in an operation, including intelligence gathering, including weaponeering, and they also have typically lawyers involved. When you make the claim that an IDF soldier shot a Palestinian, those three people, the three hostages that came up with white flags, that something horrible happened, I think that's a fair statement to make, and I think a lot of criticism is deserved. But when you make that statement that 4 children were killed by a strike, the claim that you're making is that multiple levels of the IDF signed off. And then they start talking about how he doesn't understand the IDF process. He thinks he does because he read it in Wikipedia. Let's just go back a little bit to this, though. So, and I've seen this with the other thing, and like Loner Box has made the same thing. When they've seen, they like get on stream and react to a fucking viral fucking video of some atrocity conducted by the IDF, like killing people waving flags. I think he's bringing up a specific example. He'll do a lot of minimizing of what happened. He'll do a lot of trying to think of all these different ways where the victims were being reckless. And then eventually, if there's no other excuses, he'll just say, well, yeah, this was just like a rogue commander. You know, this kind of thing is bad, but it's not reflective of their system. They weren't ordered to do this by higher ups. It's not an official policy. So this is interesting. Norman's like, you don't understand the process. Steven's like, I do understand the process. Oh, wild.
I do understand the process. I'm telling you. I'm trying to explain to you right now. Yes.
That's crazy. I can click here and it'll open it up right to that point on my browser. Fucking amazing. I do understand. I'm telling you. I'm trying to explain it to you right now. Really? So you're in the IDF? No, it's basic. You're studying the IDF. You can ask anybody that talks about, aside from Wikipedia, can you tell me what your knowledge of the IDF is? You can talk to people who work in the military. What's your knowledge of the IDF? Your audience can look this up. Do you think that bombing and strikes are decided by one person in the field? What can I look up about how bombings and strikes are decided by the IDF? Moine's like, can I respond to that? Can I respond? I wish you could, Moine. You should have just responded to it right then. I think you will talk later. He says, I'd like to respond. I think the question you're trying to answer. I'm trying to answer his question. The basic claim is that it would be fair to assume that such a strike could have only been carried out with multiple levels of authorization and signing off. Let's accept that for the sake of argument. We now have seen incident after incident after incident after incident where entire families are vaporized in single strikes. Who's in the families? Who lives in the house inside? Asks Benny Morris. Very interesting response from Benny Morris. We've now seen incident after 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 we've seen incident after incident. Incident after incident after incident, where entire families are vaporized in single strikes. Benny interrupts to say, who's in the families? What do you... Let's imagine we're in Benny Morris's head, and we represent Benny's, like, ideal expectations. Like, it's like, Benny, what do you think when you said that? What would have been the best way that could turn out? Let's say you said that and you just rolled a 20. Entire families were vaporized in single strikes. But who was in the families? And Moyne stops and goes, huh? I mean, it was Hamas. And Benny would say, that's right. They deserve to die. Whole Hamas families. That's right. I admit, all the bombings of all those hospitals and families was just Hamas the whole time, and they were bad guys. Is that what you expected? Did you expect Moyne to say, oh, okay, you got me. They were all bitches and motherfuckers who deserved to die. They were all of them were sex offenders. All the families were harboring serial killers and were also cannibals. Yeah. You got me, Benny. You got me. We've seen incident after incident after incident where they are vaporized in single strikes. Benny Morris asks just one of the most insultingly fucked up, dehumanizing questions as a response to what Moeen is literally just trying to finally get across. He's been trying to get his word in for like 3 pages. 4 pages. Now, so let's go back though. Before, because Moeen's like, I got something to say. But then Steven and Norm kind of go back and forth and take up a lot of the time. So let's see what they were up to. While Moeen is cooking up his response in his head right now, we're going to take a little sidetrack and get into this Stephen and Norm back and forth. So here we go. Stephen says, entire apparatus that are designed to figure out how to strike and who to strike. And when you say that 4 children are targeted, you're saying that a whole apparatus that tries to murder poor Palestinian children. Norman says, you made my argument better than me. You made my argument better than me. Stephen, you're just saying what you're just saying what the thing is, and then trying to be like, and which is ridiculous. They have this whole theory, this whole system of how like the water that's on the earth somehow like evaporates up into the air, into the clouds, and then that water eventually condenses into rain, and that rain falls back on the earth, and that water will then flood into various lakes and oceans and eventually end up in the ocean and then evaporate again in like this endless cycle. It's a ridiculous argument. I think this is like the reductio ad absurdum technique. I don't call them informal logical fallacies. I call them techniques. Because these people are athletes, in my opinion. Anyone who takes to the microphone to give your opinion, well, in my mind, you're a fucking athlete. And you should drink some Gatorade and you should stretch. You made my arguments better than me. You tried to do a reductio ad absurdum, but you forgot to like say it in a way that makes it sound absurd. It doesn't sound absurd. You're just like, cause you are not contesting that 4 children were struck with a drone. You're just insisting that if someone is struck with a drone, that means there was an entire apparatus of higher ups giving the okay for that strike. Okay, sure. Then therefore, the entire apparatus ordered that strike. What are you saying, Stephen? You're just making Norm's argument for him. Just because you squeeze in at the very, very end, which is a ridiculous argument. No, actually, it's not a ridiculous argument, Stephen. It's a pretty good argument for that this is done purposely and systematically. Because, again, that's just one fucking example. It's been happening again and 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 again. That it's just happening. Well, how else can I say it? Repeatedly. Okay, let's go to the next page. Stephen says, you don't understand the strength of the claim that you're making. Mr. Finkelstein, you don't understand the strength of the claim that you're making. You're saying that from a top-down level, that lawyers, multiple commanders, intelligence, all these people signed off on killing poor Palestinian children? Mr. Bonnell, do not tell me what I don't understand. It's true, I don't spend my nights on Wikipedia. I read books. I admit that that's a waste of time, by the way. You're wasting time. I know, books are a waste of time. With all due regard. Well, according to you, they are. The only thing you take from them are the 2 or 3 quotes that you use to push people around. Ooh, 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 ooh. We got a weak counterattack from Steven. That is like a noodly armed. That's the noodliest little. Oh, that's embarrassing. And when you're someone like me who hates Steven this much, it's almost charming to watch him just be fucking pathetic and embarrassing. Just a classic little cringe. The only thing you take from them. So, Norman Finkelstein, here's what his MO is. Okay? He reads a book. And, like, you know, when I see someone who's got a bunch of books, they're always reading books, I figure these are a good use of my time, let's say, to sit and read this book. Right? But Norm is different. Norm's like, this is such a waste of time. But I gotta find something. I gotta find something to push these people around with. Here we go. Look, all right, I found a great quote. I'm gonna pull this out, and I'm gonna use it to push Benny around. I'm gonna say, hey Benny, look what you wrote. Benny, look what you wrote. And then, once I get 2 or 3 of these facts, I'll just close this book up because it's a big waste of time to fucking read books. I think they're a waste of time because, except for the fact that I got these 2 or 3 quotes, because I'm going to have so much fun pushing people around with these. Tell you what. They're not going to push me around. I'm going to push them around with these 3 quotes. Or maybe 2. Okay, I'll take all 3. Why not? That way I can push them even more. I love pushing people around with quotes. Steven, in a debate, it's like, my interlocutor thinks books are a waste of time because the only thing he takes from the books are 2 or 3 quotes that he uses to push people around. If you read a book, how many quotes do you have to take from it before what is this standard of like enjoying books or valuing books is determined by the number of things you take from them? Should he be taking 47 quotes from it? Or is it just that he uses the quotes to push people around? I mean, all you're describing is like you cited a book. And you cited things that the person on the other side of the table was written in that book. That's related. That's material to the question at hand on the debate table. Yeah. And 2 or 3 quotes. He did a lot more than that. He read whole passages. He summarized other things. He admitted he's drawing from a large pool of examples. So he's only going to read a couple examples because otherwise he's already been talking for 10 minutes. I mean, like, what? There's one thing I'll say about Norm is that I didn't think he skimmed too shallowly through all this material that he's read. That's like the last thing you would assume. So it's just a pathetic little retort. He's also says, that's a waste of time, by the way, you're wasting time. Now, what did Stephen mean by this? The way he says you're wasting time leads me to believe, rather than you're wasting your time or you're wasting... I think what he would mean here is you're wasting our time. You're wasting time in this debate by talking about books, which I guess Stephen believes that Lex is going to officially strike them from the record. So you're wasting your time, man. But because of his timing, Norman Finkelstein just said, I read books. And Stephen immediately goes, that's a waste of time, by the way. You're wasting time. And then Norm's like, I know, books are a waste of time. Because Stephen's more of a Wikipedia kind of guy. And hey, guess what? I am too. Okay? Sorry if there's like literally one thing that me and Stephen have in common now. Fuck. But I'm less of a book guy and more of a Wikipedia guy. But I don't... You dick. He's a dickhead. So Benny Morris comes in after Norman's like, yeah, I know they're a waste of time. I completely respect the fact, and I'll say it on the air, as much as I find totally disgusting what's come of your politics, a lot of the books are excellent. And I'll even tell you, because I'm not afraid of saying it, whenever I have to check on the basic fact, the equivalent of going to the Britannica, I go to your book. I know you got a lot of facts right. Lex Friedman, Benny Morris's book, for the listener. Yeah, Norm is addressing Benny Morris. I would never say books are a waste of time, and it's regrettable to you that you got strapped with a partner who thinks that all the wisdom... He didn't say they're a waste of time. Okay, and this is where Moyne comes back in. So that little intermission was basically, you're making this argument better than me. You don't understand. Don't tell me what I don't understand. I fucking read books. You read Wikipedia. And by the way, Benny, your books are actually dope. But your politics are fucking whack. Then Moin Rabbani's back. I'd like to respond to what you're saying. I think the question that we're trying to answer. Benny Morris, diarrhea mouth. He cannot fucking... He doesn't know when to stop. He just blurts out shit. Completely unrelated shit to just try to derail anything. And he knows whatever Moin Rabbani's about to say is going to be devastating to the Zionists. So, of course, you got to interrupt him. He's about to say something sensible. But you can't allow that. I think you don't understand Israel, you know? Neither of you really understand Israel and how it works. What are you fucking talking about? He's like, he's having a personal fight with Stephen. Like, you don't fucking read books? Because when I said I read books, you said that's a waste of time. It's perfectly reasonable for Norman to interpret that as him saying, you reading books is a waste of time. 100%. Stephen may not have meant that. He should have clarified. He should have clarified by saying, well, by talking about it right now, you're wasting our time. Instead, he's just said, that's a waste of time, by the way. You're wasting time. So that can be interpreted in either way. That could either be as to, when one person says, I read books, and the next person responds, that's a waste of time. How else would they interpret the word that in that case? Whomst among us would not interpret that to mean that what you just said is a waste of time. What I just said was I read books. So, therefore, that's what you said. But Benny's going to say he didn't say they're a waste of time. And then just hard right turn. I don't think you understand Israel. You don't even understand how it works. Benny Moyne's like, dude, I'm trying to talk about the thing from 3 minutes ago. Let me finish, please. I think we're all agreed that Palestinians have deliberately targeted civilians, whether we're talking about Hamas and the Islamic Jihad today or previously. I prefer the word murdered and raped rather than targeted. Targeted is too soft for what Hamas did. Benny, why are you like, you're literally demonstrating one of Moyne's very key arguments against you, which is how you deliberately like enhance and editorialize, dare I say, and use and say shit like, I prefer murdered and raped rather than targeted. But you said targeted when you talked about everything else. Anytime the Palestinians were victims, you said targeted casualties, right? Were killed, left dead, had died, right? These are all, you're so passive. And now you're literally interrupting again. How fast? 53:53 to 54:10. So 17 seconds. He could make it 17 seconds without. And obviously, he's on the first part. He's on the first leg of what's clearly a compound thought. It's like, I think we're all agreed that this and this and this, whether that this is this is this is this. But and then you have a whole second thing to say. Well, that little breath, not a physical breath, but a rhetorical breath. Benny Morris is like, I already have something to say about the first part of what your thing is that I'm gonna word police you. I don't think you should have said targeted, because you're downplaying it. You're making it sound soft. It doesn't sound soft, Benny. I promise you. Targeted civilians doesn't sound fucking soft. It might to you because you're a genocidal fucking freak. But it's not soft language, you fuck. God, you're a fucking piece of shit. What a disgusting fucking piece of shit old man this guy is. God damn it. This guy right here. Oh, someone take a shit in his breakfast every morning, please. Please. I don't care if you're a cat or a dog or a monkey or anything. You just have to do it. What a fucking dickhead. I prefer the word murdered and raped. Yeah, I bet you fucking prefer it. Stephen Bonnell. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Moyne, I'm not talking about Benny Morris. I'm talking about this now. Are you fucking senile, Benny? Like, just follow along with this conversation. Benny Morris, out of nowhere, just says, I don't think you understand Israel. Okay, whatever. Let me finish. Because this all goes back to this question that Stephen was asking about the process. Are you claiming that multiple levels of the IDF signed off on killing Palestinians? And he's like, I can respond to this, right? Stephen and Norm bicker for a little bit more. Norm kind of finishes off by just trying to say something nice to Benny, but then also giving like a little insult to Stephen, to which Benny Morris says he didn't say they're a waste of time. Moin Rabbani's like, let's bring this back and let's answer the question on the table. I'd like to respond. Benny just fucking flips out and says, I don't think you understand Israel. What was being said before that was like they weren't even really talking about Israel. Let me finish. We're all agreed that Palestinians have deliberately targeted civilians. I prefer the word murdered. Fine, whatever. I'm not talking about this now. He literally didn't even say, I'm talking about this now. Buddy, if Moyne were Canadian, he would have been like, buddy, yeah, buddy, but I'm trying to answer his question, all right? Historically, there is substantial evidence that Palestinians have targeted civilians. Whether it's been incidental or systematic is a different discussion. I don't want to get into that now, but for some reason there seems to be a huge debate about whether any Israelis have ever sunk so low as to target a civilian a lot, guy. Historically, there's substantial evidence have targeted civilians. Whether incidental or systematic is a different discussion. I don't want to get into that now. For some reason, there seems to be a huge debate about whether any Israeli has ever sunk so low as to target a civilian. No, we've agreed. We've both said. We just agreed. I just said that this has happened here and there. We've agreed on that. What we're saying is it's not policy, which is what you guys are implying, that they kill civilians deliberately. Okay. All right, we're kind of getting into a flow now. If I understand you correctly, you're basically making the claim that none of these attacks could have happened without going through an entire chain of commands. Yeah. That's what Stephen was like breathlessly insisting. For strike cells that are involved in drone attacks or plane attacks, yeah. Yes. My understanding of the Israeli military, and you've served in it, you would know better. It's actually a fairly chaotic organization. No, that's not true, especially not the Air Force. Extremely, extremely organized. The Air Force works in a very organized fashion, as he says, with lawyers, a chain of command, and ultimately the pilot drops the bomb where he's told to drop it. Protective Edge, Protective Edge, was that 200 strikes in like 60 seconds? I think the opening of Protective Edge, the coordination between, you're talking about 2008. I think Protective Edge was 2014, but I'm just saying that the coordination in the military is pretty tight. They're sick. They're organized. Well, my understanding of the Israeli military, it's very organized, is that it's quite chaotic, and there's also a lot of testimonies from Israel. But be that as it may, I'm prepared to accept both of your contentions that it's a highly organized and disciplined force. Air Force under any scenario is going to be more organized than the other branches. And you're saying such a strike would have been inconceivable. Well, I'm not saying necessarily inconceivable. I'm saying that would have required murderous intent on so many different levels. I don't think good evidence has been presented to say that's... Your basic claim is that it would be fair to assume that such a strike could have only been carried out with multiple levels of authorization and signing off. Let's accept that for the sake of argument. We've now seen incident after incident after incident after incident where entire families are vaporized in single strikes. Oh, Benny Morris, you just cut a butt in and you say the most disgusting, fucking dehumanizing question in the context, right? Out of context, this could mean anything. Who's in the families? I love Moyne's answer. Family members. Who's in the family? A family member. Who's in the family? A family member. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant answer. No, next to the house in which the families are killed. Oh, those were neighbors. Who's in the neighborhood? Neighbors. Neighbors. Who's in the neighborhood? Neighbors. Who's in the family? Family members. Who's in the club? Club members. This is a fun game. Who's in the firehouse? Firefighters. Who's in the library? Book eaters. We've seen incident after incident after incident after incident after incident. Maureen Rabbani is cooking you, Benny. Maureen Rabbani is cooking Benny Morris in the butt. Cooking your butt. Deep fried. Because, yeah, you guys just set up all this time insisting that, hey, if there's airstrikes, you better believe those are ordered from above and they are carried out with multiple levels of authorization. And they literally just do it over and 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 over again. And Benny Morris, your only comeback is to imply that all of them fucking deserved it. And then he's like, no, next to the house in which these families are killed. Oh, who lives next to the house? Because who's in the families? Family members. No, next to the house. We've seen incident. Do you know that Hamas weren't in that house? Do you know that their ammunition dumps weren't in those houses? So they did do it on purpose. Because maybe you can't prove there wasn't ammunition or Hamas inaudibles in that house. Moeen says, why do I have to prove a negative? You're saying that they deliberately targeted families. If Israel wanted to kill civilians in Gaza, they could have... I fucking hate this argument. If they wanted to kill civilians, they could have killed 500,000 by now with the number of strikes they've done. And the fact that they've only killed a certain small number. This is such a fucked up argument to make. First of all, it's not an effective argument to make. It's very easy for people to misunderstand. As you saying, well, I don't know. It's so, okay. If Israel wanted to kill civilians in Gaza, they could have killed 500,000. Okay. They could have also killed 30,000 if they wanted to kill civilians. If they wanted to kill civilians, they could have killed insert number. No matter what number you put there, doesn't... It's also fucking stupid because on one hand, obviously with this kind of weaponry and carpet bombing and shit like that, you can kill a lot of people. But you can't kill like all the people. Right? Like people will scatter like roaches. And they'll hide. And they'll get around stuff and they'll never be seen and they'll get away and that's just how numbers and people work. Like if you're trying to eradicate a whole swarm of ants or something, you know, ants, it's probably a bad example because ants are like a hive mind. But you'll never get all the ants. You'll never get all of something, right? So even doing their just like sloppy war crime bullshit and like they do deliberately target people, but then the way they carry out the killing is like, let's kill everyone around them as well. Boom, boom. So it's absolutely fucking abhorrent and ridiculous to justify it. So he's already like doing that shit. Who was in the house next door to the family that got murdered? Huh? Huh? Dude, I can't think of a single person who's so bad. I might have just thought of him. Okay, but who's so bad that if they were in one house and there was like innocent people in all the houses around them, that I would kill all of those people just to kill that one guy. I don't know. I think I'd be like, we gotta find another way. we gotta use something besides a giant bomb. How about just a gun? For one guy. Or how about poison? Find his favorite food and put poison in it. Be easier. So, Moyne's like 30,000 dead Palestinians? Could give a fuck. Won't even roll out of bed. It's a small number. Small number in proportion over 4 months, probably an indication that 12,000 children only. 12,000 children is only. If that's the case, why is it only? Yeah, you said only. Professor Morris, here's a question for you. If we take every combat zone in the world for the past 3 years, every combat zone in the world, in Vietnam, Americans killed 1 million people. Well, the blah, blah, blah killed 40 million. I was in the anti-war movement. Don't strap me. The Americans killed 1 million people in Vietnam. Fine. And 30 million Russians were killed during World War II. So everything else is irrelevant. Professor Morris, here's a question. It's very perplexing. If you take every combat zone in the world for the past 3 years and you multiply the number of children killed by 4, every combat zone in the world, you get Gaza. So when you say, what is that supposed to prove? Oh my God. Finkelstein says, just shut up. What's that supposed to prove? What do you mean, what's that supposed to prove? Three years. All in the entire world, the number of children killed in a combat zone. That number is equal to the number of children killed in Gaza in 4 fucking months. What is that supposed to prove? Bro, it's not a proof of anything. It's a response to Benny Morris saying, not that many people died. It's not that big of a deal. It's only 30,000. It's only 12,000 children. The fuck are you saying? The fuck? What's that supposed to prove? Shut the fuck up, Steven. Your speaking privileges are hanging by a thread. I'm going to literally start censoring you out of these videos. I'm going to literally edit you out of this entire debate. Okay? One more outburst from you, Mr. Bonnell, and you're being edited out of existence. I'm going to literally like repost all of these streams, but I'm going to cut out any reference to your ass. I will disappear him from my channel. That'll be another punishment. Firstly, you're lying. You're lying on Hamas numbers. I think he says relying. No, I'm not lying. Did he say lying? You're lying on Hamas numbers. No, I'm not lying. Hamas numbers aren't necessarily true. The numbers that everyone else, I'm lying in the numbers. Lying in the, I'm pretty sure he's saying relying. They're saying relying here, right? They're not saying I'm lying. let's go to this here.
Shut up.
You're relying
And
on
I'll tell you.
Hamas numbers.
No, I'm not.
Oh, he says both. He says, you're lying. You're relying on Hamas numbers. You're lying. You're relying. Rely to me. Go ahead and rely to me.
Numbers are
I'm
not
relying on the
necessarily
numbers
true.
that
You know
everybody
that.
else. I'm relying on the
Sure,
numbers.
even
that
if we take the
everybody
numbers,
else-
though, what does that?
Numbers are
I'm
not
relying on the
necessarily
numbers
true.
that
You know
everybody
that.
else. I'm relying on the
Sure,
numbers.
even
that
if we
everybody-
take.
I'm relying, he says. I'm relying on the numbers. Not lying in. Steven, even if they take those numbers, though, what does that prove? What does that prove? It proves that this is disproportionately fucking bloody and deadly, you dick. Like, God, that's the fucking annoying sophist bullshit where they can just blurt out bullshit, say a bunch of shit, and then you can prove them wrong and they'll go, what does that prove? It proves that thing that you said wrong. I never said that. Yes, you fucking did. You're angry. Why are you you're so triggered? This is how dipshits win fucking internet debates. Right? Because nobody could take the time to slow it all down and work it all out and get this shit filtered out of it so we can truly understand what the fuck is being said. You're relying on Hamas numbers. Even if we take those numbers, what does that prove? Those are Hamas numbers, which might not be true. They could invent anything. They could invent anything because you know that they are a mendacious organization. Mendacious. I know, mendacious. Believe me. You like the word mendacious? I gotta be honest, Professor Morris. I don't like the word mendacious. I'm not saying it's a bad word. I'm just saying I don't like that you used it. I don't. I literally don't like that you used it.
Okay.
Hamas numbers.
Okay.
Which may not
Fine,
be true.
fine,
They could invent
fine.
anything because
I
you know
think-
that they are
I
a
think
mendacious organization.
I know mendacious. Believe me.
You like words.
Mendacious, as in the
mendacious
Israeli
organization.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Okay. So here's the thing. The
Mendacious
Israeli
organization.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Believe me.
You like words.
Mendacious, as in the
mendacious
Israeli
organization.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Mendacious means you're not telling the truth. It means dishonest, lying, untruthful, deceitful. Mendacious. That's the word of the day. Benny Morris says Hamas are a mendacious organization. Why do you think it's a mendacious organization, Mr. Morris? Norman says, mendacious? Oh, I know mendacious. Believe me, mendacious is in the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So here's the thing. You say they could have killed 500,000, but they only killed, that's your word, they only killed 30,000. They only killed 30,000. You believe that they deliberately attacked civilians. They would have killed many, many more. The fact is that they don't deliberately target civilians. If that's true, then they're so insanely incompetent that they that would mean that they're constantly, repeatedly, every day, completely missing their targets and fucking up literally every single mission by killing civilians. And when people do that and it's supposedly against the rules and they could be court-martialed, you just don't. How about we just don't? How about we just don't court-martial them and instead hail them as heroes? You don't want the truth. Oh, here's Benny Morris's big moment. You don't want the truth. Because he says, you don't understand Israeli society. I don't want to understand Israeli society. You don't want the truth. You don't want the truth. No, it's that he can't handle the truth, Benny. Say it right. I don't want to get inside their heads, says Norm. Benny says, that's a problem. That's the problem with you, Norman. You don't want to understand us. All we want is to kill the Arabs. Why can't you get along with us? Benny says, a good historian tries to get into the heads of the various protagonists. Norm says, there's a limit. There's a limit. A good historian? Are you a good historian or a bad historian? Oh, I don't know. I'm not a historian at all. When 90% of Israelis think that Israel's using enough or too little force in Gaza, I don't want to get inside that head. 40% think that Israel is using insufficient force in Gaza. I don't want to get inside that head. I don't want to get inside the head of people who think they're using insufficient force against the population, half of which is children. I don't want to get inside that head. But here's the point, because your partner wants to know the point. You don't understand political constraints. One of your ministers said, let's drop an atomic bomb on Gaza. You really think he meant that? Rabbani, he said it 3 times. No. It was said in a sort of questionable way. He didn't say they should drop an atomic bomb. He said it the day after the ICJ met. This minister is a messianic idiot. But he didn't say drop an atomic bomb. Inaudible. He said it. Inaudible. Norman. None other Israel's chief historian, the justifiably famed Benny Morris, thinks we should be dropping nuclear bombs on Iran. Iran, its leaders for years have said we should destroy Israel. Do you agree with that? They've said we should destroy Israel. Israel must be destroyed. Is that correct? This is what the Iranian leaders have been saying since Khomeini. Norm, I would say the Iranian leaders have sent mixed messages. But some of them have included, says Benny, including Khomeini. Norm, if you don't know the evidence, why are you laughing? The slightest skepticism. It's very funny. It's very funny because Iran that supports Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas. Maybe they want Israel destroyed. Brace yourself to the extent that the Houthis are trying to stop the genocide in Gaza. I support ships. I know, selectively support international law when it agrees with you, and when it doesn't, you decide to throw international law to the wind. So, this is about when the whole conversation is going to turn. Because Norm Finkelstein said, to the extent that the Houthis are trying to stop the genocide in Gaza, I support. And Stephen comes in at the same time and talking ships. I know, I selectively support international law when it agrees with you. And when it doesn't, you decide to throw international law to the wind. What's up with your pronouns, man? I? You? You? I? Shouldn't you say, I know you selectively support international law when it agrees with you? That would make sense. But you just said, I selectively support international law when it agrees with you. Again, just zero evidence of this, Bonell. When have you pointed out anything about international law that Norm Finkelstein is denying? You haven't done anything like that. Like, literally nothing. You haven't presented any evidence of anything. You read a couple little things in your opening statement like 3 hours ago. But Benny Morris turns the whole conversation, and he declares full-throatedly, with all his heart and soul, through his disgusting fucking mouth, he proclaims proudly that there's no G in Gaza. So Norm's like, if you like, hold on a second, Norm. Let me read what you said. Hold on, Norm, stop, please. Norm, just for me, please. Just give me a second. And now I've watched this and it's not clear. He's said Norm, but he turns to Benny. You said there's no genocide going on in Gaza. Let me ask that clear question. The same question I asked on the Hamas attack. Is there, from a legal, philosophical, moral perspective, is there genocide going on in Gaza today? That is the cliffhanger for the end of hour 3. Okay? So let's recap hour 3. We got 23 pages of madness. Okay, it starts with Benny Morris trying to say that this is all Hamas doing this because they wanted their own people to die. And it's according to this document, which was from 1988. And Benny says that it's like, yeah, they love death, and they were hoping to bring death upon their own people. And I mean, he doesn't say it outright, but what he implies with this argument is that Israel is doing exactly what Hamas wants them to do, which is murder all of their countrymen, women, countrymen, and country NBs. Okay, not a very convincing argument. Moyne points out that this charter from the 80s doesn't say all that. It is a pretty fucked up document, though, in the fact that it is anti-Semitic. It actually makes references to the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is problematic. So they definitely had some bad intel back then. The charter was superseded by a new charter. Benny Morris says that it's not superseded. He doesn't have any reason. He doesn't point to anything that explains that. So he's just talking out his ass. In the 2018 Hamas charter, they do clarify the difference between it makes a clear distinction between Jews and Zionists. And he's like, whether or not you want to believe that, that's the fact. That is what's in their document. Benny Moritz is like, it's insincere. Fine, whatever. That's just your opinion. There's no evidence of them ever attacking Jews who weren't Israelis, and there's no evidence of them attacking Jews or Israelis outside of Israel or Palestine. Benny Morris claims that they're taught to kill the Jews in kindergarten, and that they have toy guns and uniforms as 5 years old. This is basically ridiculed by Moeen Rabbani. Moeen Rabbani again tells them not to conflate Jews and Zionists. And he's saying there's no good case, basically, that Hamas was genocidal in their uprising of October 7th. But there definitely is for genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza after October 7th. And basically, he says that this should all be investigated by a proper independent international investigation. Benny Morris is like, you don't need to investigate anything because you already know how many fucking people died. And there were beheadings. Any evidence of that? No, none at all. In fact, Norman has pretty good evidence that they didn't happen because they did not appear in the court documented defense submitted before the ICJ that you used to try to say how atrocious October 7th was. You dick? Steven starts bickering with Norm about nothing. They're just trying to be like, do you admit that 800 to 850 to 900 civilians died, and who killed them? It takes a long time of them just like asking this stupid question in the stupidest way. Finkelstein already answered it in the source material that Stephen is referencing, but he answers it again, and then Moeen Rabbani comes in and answers it 2 or 3 or 4 times, rephrasing it, making it clear, spelling it out. Stephen's like, well, there's this conspiracy theory out there, and I think you two are believers in it. And they're like, well, we don't know what the fuck to tell you because we're just talking about what the numbers are. And we actually know all this shit in way more detail than you do, because Moeen even like talks about how it was not just Hamas, it was also other groups. There was the Islamic whatever. There's other like resistance groups that were working in concert for this uprising. And then Stephen's like, I can't believe you said some, because some could be anything. I think that's doing a lot of heavy lifting. His whole thing about heavy lifting, what he's saying is, Moeen, I think you're downplaying. I think you're understating what you really believe. You just said some were killed by the IDF, but what I think we want to say is that most of them. I think you want to say that, but you're too fucking scared to admit that you're that you're also a conspiracy theorist. I think that's why he said that some is doing a lot of heavy lifting. I've come around on, like, I've thought a lot about this whole that's doing heavy lifting remark. Because what the fuck does that mean, right? What the fuck does he mean when he says, I just think when you use the word some, that's doing a lot of heavy lifting. When did he say some? He said some were killed in the crossfire, some were killed by Israeli shell fire. And then he says the majority were killed by Palestinians. Right? Moin Rabbani, that's what he says. And then Stephen says, I think when you use the word some, that's doing a lot of heavy lifting. You said, some did this and some did that. The majority were killed by this other thing. Some this, some that, but the majority, da. How does some doing a lot of heavy lifting? Some like green tea, some like black tea, but the majority like coffee. Well, I just think when you use the word some there, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. What else could that mean? I think Stephen is trying to plant a bug in the mind of the listeners that Moin Rabbani is way more crazy than he's letting on. Like, he's actually... Like, you know how, like, actual anti-Semites, like white supremacist anti-Semites, they won't, like, admit what they actually believe. They're constantly just using the dog whistles and the little things like that. Stephen is trying to, like, paint Moin as one of those. He's like, come on, what do you really believe? Oh, you really think that? I'd like you to outline your argument, but I think you're using some tricky language here when you said some were killed in crossfire. The implication being, I think you, Moin, are actually believe that it was the majority that did it. But, Stephen, if that was actually his opinion, wouldn't he be saying that in this debate? And, like, whatever, if someone has, like, a secret hidden opinion that they never reveal out loud, and in fact the words they're speaking are different from that during the debate, you should go based off of the words that they're saying. Now, Stephen, if you maybe if you did a little prep and you read Moin Rabbani's book and you like quoted something from it, maybe, but I don't think so. Who used some? Stephen's like, some can mean anywhere from 1% to 49%. Dum 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 dum. I'm the dumbest at the boy today. Okay, we got to get past it. If we dwell on it, we're never going to get past it. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Lex comes in and he's like, oh, my God, these numbers. These numbers are very interesting. What fucking numbers, dude? What fucking numbers? Nobody said a number in so long. Oh, yeah, it was 1,400 dead, eventually reduced it to 1,200 dead. And then Moin Rabbani's talking a lot. Stephen Bonnell's talking a lot. And then they're talking about some. And then Stephen says 1% to 49%. And Lex is like, so these numbers here are important and interesting and important. God, golly, all these numbers, I'm very fascinated with all the numbers you guys were saying. I liked how all the numbers ended with 00. 200 corpses, 1,400 dead, 1,200. You know? It's just like really cool. It's so interesting how all these numbers... Well, one of the numbers ended with a 50 instead of a 00, but at least it ends with 0. 400 or 500 is what Stephen said. Yeah, these are real interesting numbers. They're also... so interesting because they're not like actually like super exact numbers. They're kind of like not key numbers for making points. They're literally approximate numbers that nobody on either side of the debate table bothered to look up and have ready for like fact sheets. I believe the exact numbers of some of these things are definitely known. It's just interesting that like nobody cared to look that up, and everyone's just like, I don't know, eight to 900 or something. It's all ballpark numbers. So poor Lex Friedman's just getting lost in this, and he's probably, I don't know if he is, one of his note-taking techniques is like, just write down any numbers that you hear. And anytime someone says a number, just write it down. And so when he looks down at his notes, he's just got like 200, 1400, 1200, 1%, 49%. And so he's like, okay, I got to interrupt here. I want to get the conversation to be on, are the Palestinians justified in violent resistance, right? So he's like, I got to transition to that. Oh, these numbers here are very important and interesting. Yeah, it's really important that we have a record of all those numbers that were discussed. All of those ballpark, like, pulled out of the ass numbers from everyone on both sides. We really need to keep those numbers from a legal perspective. We should really keep track of those interesting fucking numbers. Lex, you're so fucking stupid. Why are you the most rich and fucking famous fucking stupid fucking interview guy? How does that go? Why is the world so topsy-turvy? Why? It's got to be some kind of late stage shit, because I feel like nobody this bad could have gotten away with it back when there was only like 3 channels, you know? But he's doing the same kind of 3 channel kind of shit on old timey TV when they just like sit down with some fucking guy and be like, blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Today we're hosting a debate about the blah, 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 blah. All right, I don't know. Maybe everyone is so stupid. Maybe Lex Friedman is just the typical fuck. Maybe it's typical. Maybe they're all like this. Maybe I'm like this. These numbers are very important, almost from a legal perspective. Almost? Almost legal? Almost from a legal perspective. Well, I have a legal perspective. These numbers are not important. Okay. What about me? I'm from almost a legal perspective. I'm in law school right now. I'm studying for the bar. Oh, so this is important from your perspective then, as someone who almost has a legal perspective. Very good, very good, very good. Moin Rabbani says yes. So if we break this up into questions, we have the first question that basically goes for 6 pages. That question is, was the October 7th uprising, was it genocidal? Okay. Benny made a half-hearted argument that it was, based on lies and misinformation as his evidence. And Rabbani's argued that it's not. And he appealed to international law and wartime stuff. And, yeah, I think he made a better argument. The next question is, are Palestinians justified in violent resistance? Now, part of that was already kind of answered by Moin Rabbani when he described how they did have a right to fight back. They get in a little back and forth. They totally misunderstand Moin Rabbani, saying that, trying to put words in his mouth to make it seem like Moin approves of attacking civilians, when he clearly just says the opposite of that. But he says that attacking civilians is distinct from seizing territory and population centers, right? Those are distinct. One is legitimate, the other is illegitimate. He also points out how there's a big double standard, how everyone always has to condemn the Palestinians for everything they do, but no one ever has to condemn Israel. Benny's like, no, they condemn us every night, every day and every night on every television channel. Which is complete bullshit. And like anyone with eyes knows that. Norm Finkelstein. Oh yeah. And during that little back and forth, when Benny was trying to make Moeen look like a heartless monster. You don't even care. You don't condemn the killing of civilians. Benny says, I would condemn the killing of civilians. I would do that. I would, for example, condemn Israeli assaults on civilians, deliberate assaults. I would condemn them, but you're not doing that. So that was a big mistake by Benny because it lit a fire under Norm. You said, quote, you said I would condemn any time Israel deliberately attacks civilians. The problem, Professor Morris, is over and over again you claim in the face of overwhelming evidence that they didn't attack civilians. And then Benny Morris is in the position where he now has to bring up Israeli atrocities and pretend that he condemns them. And he doesn't pretend very hard because he never actually condemns them. He just says that he wrote about them. And then he accuses Norm of cherry picking. You don't understand what cherry picking means. You ain't never been to a cherry orchard. All right? All right? Your cherry orchard cherry hasn't been popped yet. Let's just say that. So let's fast forward. When you were an adult, what did you say about the 1982 Lebanon War? This is another time when fucking Norm pulls out a book and reads words from the book. And this is going to piss Lex off. Because, according to Lex, this is a book which was written in the past. And the listeners at home don't know about it. So it's best to just say the things in the present now instead of old books that are in the past. Oh, and definitely talk about history. But please don't reference any of these books written so long ago. Such, it's just so not relevant to the people of today. My viewers, my listeners, they're only interested in things happening right here and now. Okay, so if you read from a book, that's not allowed. That's bad. So we have to respect Alexifer's. I guess it's a religious belief. Okay, so he's going to pull out a reference. Now, he doesn't find the reference immediately, which unfortunately leaves a little opening for Stephen Bonnell to go, let me see if I can get Moeen Rabbani to say something that is impeaching, something incriminating. I bet I can pull something out of him. He says, Moeen Rabbani. He says, real quick, you bring up something that's really important that a lot of people don't draw a distinction between. Is that there is just causes for war and there's just ways to act within a war. And these two things principally do have distinction from one another. However, I appreciate that distinction. The idea that the cause for war that Hamas was engaged in, I don't believe if we look at their actions in war or on the statements that they made, it doesn't seem like it had to do with territorial acquisition. By taking land back. No, the point I was making was what was Hamas trying to achieve militarily on October 7th? As I was pointing out, the focus had been very much on Hamas attacks on civilians and atrocities and so on. I'm not saying those things should be ignored. What I'm saying is that what's getting lost in the shuffle is that there were extensive attacks on military intelligence facilities. As far as other aspects are concerned, because I think either you or Lex asked about the legitimacy of these attacks, I said I'm unclear on whether efforts by Hamas to seize Israeli population centers in and of themselves are illegitimate, as opposed to actions that either deliberately targeted Israeli civilians or actions that should reasonably have been expected to result in the killing of those strikes, by definition, are illegitimate. I want to be very clear about that. So here comes Benny. Illegitimate means you condemn them? Illegitimate means you condemn them. 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 Illegitimate? Moin Rabbani says illegitimate means they are not legitimate. Because Benny, what you're all up his ass like, did you condemn them? Do you condemn them? You said but you didn't condemn them. Benny, did you condemn them, Benny? You said, quote, inaudible, Israel attacks civilians. I've written extensively about it. In Kfar Qasim, they killed civilians, and I've written that. So you're just admitting you're selecting. As Steven says, you cherry pick. You didn't condemn them. You spent that precious time that you could have been condemning Israel. You spent it saying congratulations and then quoting Steven. As Steven says, yes, as once said by the great Steven, you cherry pick. Wise words from Stephen. You cherry pick. You cherry pick. You cherry pick. You cherry pick. All right. So they're going back and forth. Stevie Winnell says the sentence that made me flip out and devise an entire fantastical punishment system to inflict upon him in my imagination as the only way that I can function without constantly screaming. We're just gonna go past it. Okay? I just wanted to live in a world for a second where Stephen didn't say that. And I mean, I still hate him with the fire of 1,000 suns, but if I try to add that in there, it just multiplies the suns, it's maxed out. It's all maxed out. We'll just overlook it for now. We're just going to skate right past it, just like these guys did. Just like Moin Rabbani did. And then Steven's just still bickering, and he's like, my quick question was... And it's just the same fucking question. Of like, well, was it legitimate? So you think maybe it was legitimate? No, I didn't say maybe. Oh, so you think it was legitimate? Yes. Well, do you think Israel was legitimate in their counterattack? No, of course not. All right. And then he makes a little mark in his notebook. Makes a little mark in his notebook. What are you up to, Stephen? I really hope the notebook ends up coming back in hour 4 or 5 and reveals itself. What are all these little notes you're making? You're keeping tabs on like Moin Rabbani's positions. I have a feeling you're gonna be referencing that list and you're gonna point at each item and try to like string them all together and make it sound really stupid and be like, that's what Moin Rabbani says. I have the quotes. You fucking said it. So again, that was all a side stage. That was all an intermission for Norm coming back, because Norm is in the middle of roasting a little piggy called Benny Morris. Roasting. And I mean spit fucking roasting with pineapple glaze. So when he's like, okay, Benny Morris, Mr. I condemn Israelis when they commit atrocities. I'm fair-minded. Okay, Benny, here we go. First of all, double standards. When Benny Morris wrote about the war with Lebanon, Benny said, Israel was reluctant to harm civilians, sought to avoid casualties on both sides, and took care not to harm Lebanese and Palestinian civilians. You said Israel tried to pinpoint military targets, but inevitably many civilians were hit. Oh. That's your description of Lebanon. But it goes against everything else in the mainstream about what happened in that fateful war. You're the only one who fucking downplays it. You're the only one who tries to gloss it over and say, nah, they didn't really do it. They didn't really mean it. It was an accident. They didn't terrorize people on purpose. It was an accident. It was an accident that they did that. And Benny has to just flap and flounder. He interrupts with a completely irrelevant argument, trying to put a different argument into Norm's mouth, saying, no, the argument you're making is something else. The point you're making is something you didn't even realize. The reason Benny can say with such confidence that he doesn't condemn, that he condemns all attacks that Israel does on civilians is because he just denies that they do it. He just denies that they ever happen. That's the point. All right, they go back and forth. They go back and forth. Lex comes in, says, I don't like books that are written in the past. Although it's good to discuss ideas. And then they kind of go on a little bit about the value of words. Put value to words. And Benny Morris is like, I do it too. I also put value to words. And Steven's like, more than just one or two sentences at a time. He thinks he's got Norm's ass or something, like, one or two sentences guy. He's the guy who only says one or two sentences at a time. What the fuck? What is that supposed to mean? That's not like a fucking insult thing. Like one or two. Okay. Are they long sentences? Maybe. What the fuck? What the fuck kind of insult is that? Educational purpose. Then Steven goes on and on and on and on. After Lex kind of interrupts and just says, like, well, you could backtrack, but we don't have enough time to talk about everything. Ironically, wasting a lot of time just saying obvious shit. Can I respond to the Lebanon war thing? This is when he says we do a lot of weird games, and then he starts saying a lot of weird games, and then he says that Hamas uses human shields, and Norm's like, or essentially uses human shields. Essentially. And then he says, I'm saying in terms of how international law defines it and not how Amnesty International defines it. But Amnesty International describes times of human shielding, but they don't actually apply the correct international standard. I don't know anything about this. We didn't look into this at all. But Finkelstein doesn't seem to agree. He says, you don't know what's the correct international law. I know absolutely. No, you don't. I do. You don't. I do. Moiner Bonnie comes in and points out that you're being a dick because of how you're like, oh, when it's Israelis, you suddenly discover morality and condemnation, talking about what Hamas did to Israelis. But when you're talking about what the IDF did to Palestinians, it's like, hey, it's fact of life. War sucks. War is hell. It happens. And he's like, let me give you an example. No, I don't want an example. I want to keep fucking talking about bullshit. It's false equivalency. False equivalency. Bro, if you think they're making an equivalency, Jesus Christ. There were suicide bombings at the second Intifada. So the Intifadas were these other big uprisings that happened, right? So, what the fuck? My mouse is bad. Bad mouse. I have to click things like multiple times to get like one registered click. And then sometimes it registers 2 clicks because I clicked it correctly twice. Stephen Bonnell calls it incidental loss of life. Ooh, I think that's another one that made me flip the fuck out. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. If you say that. Talking about Gaza. Incidental loss of life. Genocide. It's genocidal. All right. And then that pretty much brings us back to where I started our review at the start of the stream. And I think it's about time to go. So that's our wrap up of hour 3. Next time we're going to start hour 4 on the topic of Gaza. Hour 4 is also on the topic of peace. So it'll be half about Gaza, half about peace. All right. So speaking of peace, peace out. All right. Free Palestine. Remember, it's not complicated. There's just a lot of shit to untangle, but it is absolutely not complicated to stand against genocide and stand for Palestinians. It's clearly, obviously, the right thing and the right position. So be on the right side of history. Free Palestine. And everyone else, go fuck yourself. Bye-bye.